From affirmative action to the Palmetto Artisans Program to the 200th year anniversary of the Mother Emanuel AME Church, I sit down one-on-one with Dot Scott of the Charleston branch of the NAACP for a special edition of Quintin's Close-Ups. And be sure to download the free Quintin's Close-Ups app in your Apple or Google Play stores. And listen to this interview later on the free Quintin's Close-Ups iHeartRadio podcast. Dot Scott, it's so good to see you again.
It's wonderful to see you.
I appreciate this greatly.
Thank you.
Oh, you're welcome. You know, as we sit here at the Charleston NAACP office in downtown Charleston, there's some developing news right now coming from the College of Charleston. And this is a part of the Post Inquiry article from Paul Bowles, I believe, just a couple of days ago. The College of Charleston has begun practicing race-conscious affirmative action in its admissions office again, about 2 years after quickly discontinuing the practice. In a statement published on the CFC's website Tuesday afternoon, Interim President Stephen Osborne said that the college will begin conducting an additional review of students of color who are not initially recommended for admission. When you think of students of color and admission, what sticks out in your mind?
Well, I think we continue to have a problem because people are not, when I say people, I'm referring to those in authorities at these universities and colleges. They're not inspecting what they say they expect, because I think that to continue to be working on a problem that is solvable this many years, and we continue to see it year after year after year, those same concerns continue to surface. So I am disappointed when we first found out that the affirmative action part of it had quietly somehow not being observed, because the 10 top students were being accepted from areas across the state. And given where we've been, that should have only been an add-on, because we weren't meeting any respectable level of admissions before that additional initiative. We were on the impression that would have been an add-on, and found that it wasn't. So we were disappointed and had the conversation with the interim president and some of the other officials.
And you also told the Post Inquiry this, quote, "We got some work to do at the College of Charleston." Talk to me about how much work you have to do now.
Well, the work we have to do is to not just put, one of the things that was said to me, we've got a person in charge of diversity in place. And if I remember correctly, I met this person at one of our usual Black History, speaking at different places. And yet that person was not in the room during the meeting that we were having. To me, it's going to take more than just putting someone in place. And oftentimes when we've put folks in place that are African American to look at issues around African Americans, you have to at least make that person feel that they can speak truth to power. Because if that doesn't come through, you will find oftentimes that folks will not, what we say, rock the boat. That doesn't help us. So we need to make sure that they are really laser focused on who they put in those positions. Give them the autonomy, the respect, and what I think the empoweredness to identify, make recommendations that are respected, and then you may begin to see the needle move. I liken, yes, we can make a difference in growing those numbers, with a question I asked, and I asked this of the interim president, if there had to be some correlation between the number of Black athletes you had and how many Black students you had in your overall population, and that was some level of mandate, we could fix this. Because if you tell me you've got 40% of your athletes are African American, but we're at 8 to 10% of the student body. We can do better. And we must.
And you talk about fixing things. Let me take you to this Charleston City Market. This is the headline from Brian Hicks in his particular column for the Post and Courier. NAACP president says, protect Palmetto Road sellers and don't fight the police. You said this, quote, we need to teach kids to follow the law. It's sad when kids get involved with law enforcement officials and bad things happen. We should encourage them to follow the law. Tell me, what else should the kids be learning right now as we sit here when we discuss the Palmetto Roses?
Well, I think the whole program is a wonderful program. Here again, I always say, inspect what you expect. Here again, I can also say, who is really monitoring the program? If it's a program you get started and you do nothing to make it grow, if you do nothing to promote it, that's what, it's a business, then it needs to be promoted. I think that with the level and the numbers of tourists we have in Charleston, this should be a very lucrative business. That, let's say the youth that got in trouble, if it was more lucrative, and we question whether or not he would have been a part of the program. We really don't know that. However, I think the business needs to grow. I think the city needs to be careful about how and who inspects to make sure. Maybe the new task force that's now headed up by Ruth Jordan, that she is one who has the capability to make this thing move, but we have to be deliberate, laser focus on what it is that we want to see happen. And I think that when you make that program what it could be, because the opportunities for entrepreneurship with African American in Charleston is sad. It's really sad. And given us the most recent apology for slavery and acknowledging that even on the backdrop of those who think they shouldn't have happened, and acknowledging that there are effects that continue to permeate the African American community based on issues that your father, your grandfather, and your father before then had nothing to get passed down, had no wealth, none of those things. So I think that this is an opportunity for the city to really shine in showing that African Americans, even the young one, can share in this piece of the pie, and it's not just a crumb of it. So that part I think we can do. And back to the point, I am one of those parents that I'm a staunch believer that if kids don't respect outside, they're not respecting at home. So we have to teach them that there are boundaries, that you have to work within the boundaries. We have to also be the kind of parents that ensure them, if it's not right, we're willing to go out there and fight to make it right. That's what we as African Americans that had to do all along. Unjust laws, you just have to fight to make it right. But when you break the law and allow the children to do it, they shouldn't be fighting those battles. They shouldn't. And I think that for those who thought that that the student had, the youth had a right to be combative with the authorities, I think that's a very unsafe and unsavory situation to put children in. Because I see some of the same folks who think it's all right will be at your child's funeral, and 2 months later you're the only one still grieving. Because they're not going to come back. I mean, it's not one of these things that we can go out and have a protest march and go home and nothing. Had that gone sour or gone the other way, it could have been really ugly. So I'm pleased that it was handled the way it was once the problem was there or the issue happened. But I'm saddened that folks think that it's all right to signal to children that you can break the law and it's all right. Shouldn't even signal to adults to say you can break the law and all right. There are laws we must fight and we need to do it lawfully, but we don't need to put our children in peril because we just need to count the bodies that continue to pile up. And these kids obviously don't feel like, if I feel like I want to go ahead and commit a crime and do something, that somehow I'm justified and it's coming home to roost for us.
Is the city shining now after the whole apology for slavery?
I hadn't had time enough to shine, but I think it's in the limelight. It definitely is a subject under discussion. We still have so many people in denial that it even happened. You've got people thinking slavery didn't happen, it wasn't slavery. And when you hear a council person, one of our council people, make this statement that it was necessary at the time, it's never necessary to take the rights of other people to benefit yourself. So if he thinks that's necessary, that's why I said some of these people are actually so divorced from reality, it doesn't, it's hard to communicate with them. But no, I don't think anything is shining now. I think spotlights on Charleston. I absolutely applaud the mayor and the city for doing what they did. And I know everybody don't agree with it, and I can understand that, because for so long we've been having the conversation and the conversation and again the conversation. As we have been doing even with our school system. We have it. Everybody can tell you how it should be done. And I figure, just look at the model, how we do it for the others. It's not a secret. It's out there. We know how it's done. But I liken it to children in your household. If you've got 5, 6 children and only one of them is sick, you take that one to the doctor. That means you may have to spend some money here that you don't have to spend on the other child to make it right, to put them on an even keel. We don't seem to digest that it's going to cost more. Now, Ben Navarre gets it. But we're talking about a small segment. Those are some privileged, blessed kids. I mean, obviously blessed to have an opportunity to be there. But even if we couldn't reach that level, we are so far behind. And I'm not sure that the people who want to now continue to be what I call the deciders and the implementers on our school board and in the decision-making process, are we really thinking about all of the children? One thing Ruth Jordan used to talk about, our 40,000 kids. Always, all of them. I'm counting all of them, and I applaud her for that, because that was always at the forefront. Did we do any better then? Probably not, but if we're not improving now either, then we're not moving forward at all. And with the issue of employment, housing, health, we've got a whole laundry list. It's almost like, let's check what's going right for the African American community. We're still having conversation. It's a start, but that doesn't really, for the most part, move the needle.
And you talk about conversation. I gotta bring you here to obviously the Emanuel room here at the Charleston NAACP office. It's been 200 years since the inauguration, really, of the Emanuel AME Church. What's that one word to describe Emanuel AME Church 200 years later?
I still see it as the Mother Church and Mother Emanuel. I think sometimes folks to speak of the beloved deceased that we lost in the massacre as giving up their life. I think they were chosen. Okay. I think when you look at the diverse in terms of men, women, male, old, young, that were included in it, there was a message there. And that message to me is, these are the one we've chosen to highlight some things that, hopefully for the good, it will make things better. I think that did change some mind. That, in terms of race relations, among at least a Charlestonian. I told someone at a meeting the other night, we are blessed that we have a lot of people coming in, even though the downside is, we got too many cars, we got too many bills, and all of that is a part of having. But then what you bring in, new mindsets, more progressiveness. People are more willing to not be entrenched in this belief that this is the South and it has to stay this way, and they're trying to protect what's theirs. Folks coming in, they're coming in with more progressive thoughts, less biases, less prejudice, and those kinds of stuff help us to grow. When the Mother Emanuel tragedy happened, it was just hard to put your arms around why. You ask those questions, why them, and I just feel that given the fact that when you look at those who lost their lives in that tragedy, that they was in a church. I know it had to be some kind of divine intervention, and these are the ones we need. These are who we need. We need them. It's almost like the religious part of it. You could have killed 9 other people, and I said, you have to wonder, well, we had 9 people died in the fire. We have firemen, we had 9 people at Albright, we lost them.
Right.
But this Mother Emanuel thing with the race, and a lot of folks out of guilt because some of the mindset that drove Dylan to do what Dylan did, folks will know of people who really feel and think that way and yet would not speak out. So it's like the blood is on the hands of some more than just Dylan Roof. And I think the lives absolutely was not lost in vain. While oftentimes I think about how much of the tourists and what we call issues around the economic for the city because of people coming in. It should be that the city in this apology thing would think that every dime we're making from folks coming in have to go to Mother Emanuel. I just have to sit in the church. I just have to do that. How does the city invest more to put back in the black community? You can't pay for the loss, just as you can never pay for the loss of the cost or the value of the service that slaves were extracted from slaves. This is not something you can pay for, but do you reinvest? Do you reinvest? And in a way, there are some things we have to go about. When we were looking at them, I want to make sure I'm saying his name right. Kenny, the young guy who was executed at 14 in upstate. And I'll think of his name.
Okay.
But when we go back now and we now right the wrong in words that this guy was executed, and in all probability the perpetrator was a white male who killed those girls. That absolutely. We tend to not want to make restitution. It's almost like we can say we're sorry, but what are we willing to do? Well, the first thing I want to put on the table,
Okay.
Aside from the obvious that we keep dealing with, everybody's got an interest on. I've got this interest that Denzel Cornell needs to be on the table. Denzel Cornell's death in Bayside at the hand of a Charleston officer, be him black or white, he happened to have been black, it doesn't matter the color. The officer, by watching what's happening now where folks are questioning blacks' right to be places, you're being called, the officers are being called because you just look out of place, why are you doing this? And students are in tears because they're being questioned when they're at universities and stuff, simply because the mindset of there's no rights that African Americans have that we need to respect is beginning to come back. So we've got to make sure that we not only talk about apologies, but show that we really are sorry for what we've done. And we can't keep covering things up and thinking it's going to go away. We need to revisit it at a time when it benefits. when we put a statue up for the officer, the first black police officer we had in Charleston, and his death was so suspect. There's no doubt that there are credible reason to believe that that wasn't just some guy happened to be in the car and found a gun and killed this officer. It just, but by the time there are what I call acknowledgement and any kind of restitution, the people who hurt the worst is no longer here. His mom wasn't here to see that they've got a sign up there for his with his name.
Oh, yeah.
While Denzel's mom died a couple of months before he was killed, I think that his sister is here. His stepfather has been so involved in trying to get justice. I think Charleston needs to. And I told the new chief that came in, that's a conversation we need to have. I'm not going to give up on it. And if we keep bringing it up enough, we need it'll get resolved so we can start reminding folks that's unfinished business.
Dot Scott, thank you so much for your time. I really, really, really appreciate this.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Always good to speak with you.
Likewise.
Thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome.